And good morning, everyone, and namaste. Welcome to Hindu Lounge. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, and Hindu Pact is Hindu Policy Research and Advocacy Collective, an initiative of World Hindu Council of America. We come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern and 8 o'clock Pacific, and we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues. With me, as always, our leader of Hindu Pact, Executive Director of Hindu Pact, Utsav Chakrabarti, and welcome, Utsoda. And I am Ajay Shah. I'm the president of World Hindu Council of America, or BHPA. And Utsoda, welcome. And we have an interesting topic today. We are going to talk about something from a distant past in 2008, and we are going to talk about something that happened just last week, the last 2 weeks, right? So, welcome, Utsada, and over to you.
Thank you, Ajay, and good morning, everybody. This is our 90th Hindu Lounge. So we have been at it for more than 90 weeks now. So here's
Utsada, we are professionals now, right?
we are supposed to be. Doesn't mean we are. Uh, but what is important is that this week's show actually talks about an issue that is happening today in some parts of India, has serious implications in many parts of the world, including in America. And I will throw in some light on some of those things that are happening in America as well, and has a direct connection to an event that happened in 2008, which is a good marker of what we should expect in the future, and we should look at to understand what we should not do so that we don't repeat what happened in 2008 in the future. So, Ajay bhai, go
And
ahead and let's
so that
start the show.
absolutely. And along the way, we are also going to express some of our opinions, which people may actually find them surprising because we are not going to spoil the surprise, but we are going to express some opinions that are contrary to the what you would expect. So stay tuned, and we are going to talk about it. So that the topic we have today is this week, actually earlier this week, a verdict came out on there were a series of bomb blasts that occurred in Amdavad in 2008. And a lot of people actually died in that bomb blast, and many more injured. And the verdict actually, it took a very laborious case. I read somewhere that the charge sheets were over 500,000 pages. And this was not the only blast that occurred. And I know you're going to go through the history. Several of the blasts occurred around 2008, and when these blasts occurred, there was a feeling of terror, a real terror, because it happened in Jaipur, it happened in Bangalore, it happened in Delhi twice in 2008. But I'll leave it to you to walk us through that history a little bit, and what kind of terror it created, and why, and the verdict, why it took so long, and why did the verdict take all these years from 2008 or to till now, almost 13 years. And are there events happening today around us that are connected to that verdict? So that over to you to actually walk us through a little bit of history from not that far away, but 2008, and tell us what happened in 2008. So that you are on mute.
So, Ajay bhai, what happened in 2008 is there was a series of bomb attacks that were done in uh, the Indian city of Karnavati, or Amdavad, that a lot of people call it by. Uh, this is happening in 2008, when current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, was the leader of the state. And it was at a time when India was a different country. India used to have terrorist attacks across the country almost once every month on an average, with bombs being targeting Hindu communities primarily, both leaders and common people, uh, being used every month, and a lot of people were dying. So, in this particular attack, 21 bombs were exploded, 56 people died, more than 200 people were injured. And when we say injured, you have to remember that this includes burns and losing hands and legs. And it's those people are scarred for their lives, and their lives are destroyed. So it's not just the 56 people dying, but also the 200 plus people suffering, immeasurable damages for the rest of their lives. Uh, and it led, after so many years, after almost 15 years here, close to 49 people getting convicted and 38 people getting death sentence, with 11 getting life imprisonment. So that's a number that we wanted to show you. uh, Overall, there were 78 people that were accused of being participants in the blast, those blasts that's happened. And out of them, one person turned an approver, so they switched over towards the government side and started providing
So
evidence.
basically, he took this side. He switched over to the prosecution in
Switched over.
American terms. Yeah.
Correct. Here is the most interesting part. In this particular conspiracy, these blasts that happened in Karnavati, Amdavad, uh, and the 21 bombs that were used to target the population, three of the masterminds were from Pakistan, and there was one Syrian involved, all of whom were not in India, and therefore they could not be prosecuted. Um, we could not find information on where their whereabouts. Obviously, I'm sure Indian government probably also is in the dark. Uh, there were more than 6,000 pieces of evidence that were presented over the last 14 years. Uh, so it was a massive investigation. We must give credit to the much maligned agencies of the government, both the police as well as the investigative agencies. It's a humongously difficult task to put together these cases, especially given the challenge that many human rights groups and many globally funded quote unquote human rights organizations that often act as voices of the terror groups have created all the hurdles that were created by these groups. Despite that, after 14 years, through so much painstaking hard work, uh, 1,163 witnesses, as
So
Ajay
that
said.
this is slide is in Hindi, and we apologize. We didn't get a chance to
No, no, no.
translate this to
I'm
English,
translating it. Yeah,
but
and
you may want to
half a
talk about
million,
it in
half
English.
a million pages of charge sheet documents.
Yeah.
All of this were done, and so finally they were brought to justice. And this is, I would say, this is the news of the month, if we can put it that way, given the success that was achieved in terms of bringing the perpetrators to justice. And it's, justice delayed, but it's not denied.
Yeah, so this was not the a little bit more about, maybe you can shed a little bit more light on what it was like in 2008, because that was a lot of bomb blasts were already going on, right, in 2008.
Yes, 2008 was one of the times when India used to have bomb blasts every month, and this was at the precursor to the one of the largest terror attacks in India. We all know Mumbai terror attacks, uh, when Pakistanis came from the city of Karachi, took over some of the key areas in the city for a few days, uh, killed hundreds of people, injured thousands of people, including many people in the security forces. So you all are aware of the Mumbai terror attack. So this was concurrent to that attack, and many a times people forget the hundreds of other terror attacks that were happening across the country in that year. And you have to remember that 2008 was the time when you know the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister of the country. India had a really appalling security grid, which was failing across the country. There were a growing number of jihadist Islamist organizations within India that were running around free because they had a free run politically, and they were government interference in terms of how investigations were being conducted. There was rampant appeasement going on of radical Islamic groups. There was individuals like Zakir Naik, who later on obviously is not in India anymore. But Zakir Naik was actually meeting leaders of the government and donating money to the Prime Minister Fund, and getting prime time. He spoke to the Indian Civil Service Academy in that year. So the most powerful leaders of the country, where the place where they are trained, the Indian Administrative Service, Zakir Naik, who is an ISIS recruiter, was giving lectures there. So
And
that
he's
was
still absconding, right? There's a warrant out for him. He's
starting now,
living in
but
Malaysia.
that's the level of delusion and incompetence that in India's political leadership was showing. And in that backdrop, it's a reminder to the people of India. Every time people of India today complain about disharmony and they say that, oh, the security setup is failing, and we are, there is less unity in the country, and all those things. They should just remind themselves and revisit the era of 2008, 2009, and
Yeah.
how every day people were dying because of incompetence and appeasement.
And
So,
so that I showed a graphic that showed that in early 2000s there were 2,500 deaths a year because of terrorism in India. In
mhm.
2008, the number of deaths went down. But actually, one thing to note is that the first number showed the death that included the security forces. Both of them include security forces. I think from the civilian death perspective, I don't have the numbers handy, but the number of actual incidents and number of actual civilian non-military non-security forces death was actually much higher. The amount of terror that gripped India was much higher, and we don't see that anymore. But I'm looking at the list of things with Sada. There was a 2008, there was a bombing in Assam. In 2008, there were two bombings in Delhi. There was a bombing, and there were two bombings actually in New Delhi. There was a Amdavad bombing that we are talking about today. There was a bombing in Bangalore. It was called the Bangalore serial blast. They all have a unique name by which they go. So 2008 serial blast in Bangalore. Uh, in fact, one of the witnesses overheard the one of the perpetrators of the Ahmedabad bombing saying that we did not kill enough people in Bangalore, but we are going to be successful in killing more people in Ahmedabad.
so
So
so Ajay bhai, you can literally show unity across the country in the way the bomb attacks were done. And this is such an ironic statement, because it started all the way from the north. Okay,
yeah,
from Jammu it started, and it goes all the way down. So Jammu, Varanasi, Delhi, Rampur,
Assam.
Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Delhi, Jaipur, Agartala, Imphal, Assam, Mumbai, Guwahati, Assam, Pune. So it's just it's just amazing. And in some of those blasts, like 2008 Mumbai attacks, 171 people died. In the Ahmedabad blast, 56 people died. Then in Jaipur bombings, which was carried out, 9 bombs were exploded, 71 people died. And in Delhi bombings, on 13th September, 33 people died. In Assam, 81 people died. So this was, and this continued all the way until 2014, 2013, and 2014, and then it started slowly subsiding. Especially, if you are a statistician, if you want to look at a critical time when these bombings, which were happening almost every month, really came down. And this is something that critiques of Prime Minister Modi should look at. It was after the Uri terrorist attack, where the Indian Army camp was targeted in Uri, and then there was a surgical strike that was turned into a political debate. it was after that that people started really seeing a decline. So you can literally correlate the data with the date of the surgical strike that became so controversial, was so politicized. But there is real data that shows that there is a correlation between that and the reduction in the number of attacks on civilians.
I mean, I think I mean, it is amazing that people lived in terror for over a decade before a government came, which actually was willing to confront these terrorists head on.
Correct.
And now we hear, and it requires all, not just the bill of the government, but it also requires an investment into security apparatus, because there were a lot of complaints actually after the Amdavad bombing that not enough was invested in the security of the homeland security of the country. So for example, the police were not well funded, the investigative agencies were not well funded, and there was no political will. So there's the political will, the funding, the training, all of that had to actually
And moral,
come together,
moral
and the
played a key
morale.
role. More because I in those days, or right after, in 2011 2012, I had, I had friends in the police, Indian police services, in the national security services, who I had known, and they would tell me that they were afraid to go after terrorists because they were afraid that they would be fired or their jobs taken away if somebody can come out and say that there was an encounter. And they were afraid to take on terrorists, because every police officer worth his salt, or worth her salt, who was taking on terrorists in these encounters, was being targeted. They were powerful, quote unquote, human rights Muslim groups with global funding that would just start putting cases on these IPS officers and brave police officers, and they would not be able to pursue their own cases. And it was a very sad situation, and there were brave officers who had to spend time in jail because of that, because of these accusations of quote unquote fake encounters. So there was morale was very, very low at that period of time. People were really upset, and I think it played a key role in the way Manmohan Singh's government was treated during the elections. I mean, by 2013 they had become so unpopular because of their inability and inefficiency and their appeasement, that it paved the way for Prime Minister Modi, and in the long run it has proved to be a boon, because now there are 25%, 30% reduction right away in a couple of years. And now at this point it's like 80% of the attacks are gone. Now the key attacks are still that are still happening, are happening from another flashpoint, which is the Maoists. So from 2017 onwards, all the major targeted bomb blasts and terror attacks are only remaining in the Maoist hotbeds. And we are hoping, we should all hope that eventually that's also snuffed out.
Absolutely. So who was behind this?
Yes. So it's a rhetorical question, Ajay. So the key organizations
Well,
that were.
there are, see, look, there are people who are obviously the front, and we know some of the, and there are people who are funding the terror. The terrorism itself has an ecosystem of its own, right? So there are people who are motivating some of the terrorists ideologically. There are people who are providing the logistic support, and then there are people who are carrying out some of the terror attacks. So this is an entire ecosystem of people who come together, and with a lot of resources, money, motivated people. All of that has to come together, right? So what does this ecosystem look like?
So this is a very good question, Ajay, and to give an honest answer to this ecosystem is important because it affects us even today. So the key players in this attack were from an organization called the Students Islamic Movement of India, or SIMI, which had a spin-off which was targeted and which was focusing on jihadist attacks targeting human beings, Hindus primarily. And that spin-off group that came out of Students Islamic Movement of India was Indian Mujahideen. They used to use the moniker IM. And the leader of that group, also a Simi activist, was named Muhammad Shahid Nagori. So, the reason Indian Mujahideen came into existence is because in that time, uh, there was a lot of accusation, and rightly so, that most terror attacks in India were being committed by either directly or in one degree of separation by Pakistani operatives or Pakistani individuals, or individuals from some other country. But some of them are Bangladeshis as well, radical Islamists from Bangladesh. A very popular organization with the name HUJI, Harkadul Jihad Islam, was from Bangladesh. They were the ones doing the attacks. So the level of confidence that radical Islamists had in those days, and their masters across the border had in those days, that their confidence level was so high that to prove Indians wrong and Indian security agencies wrong, that the attacks were being carried out from outside by people who were from outside the borders, they in fact started an Indian jihadist group called Indian Mujahideen. So not only were they able to do attacks with impunity, but they could also control the narrative of the attacks. That was the level of weakness India had reached as a state in those years. And so coming back to our the attacks in Amdavad, so it was done by a group called Students Islamic Movement of India. And when the attacks were done and investigation done, Muhammad Shahid Nagori came out to be the one who was the main mastermind of the attack. And they had organized jihadi camps. Nagori had organized jihadi camps in the forests of Kerala. This is important because later on you'll see Kerala is coming up again and again in many of these cases, and that's a cause for concern. And people today know what's happening in Kerala as well. So there were another key individuals that were involved, and these names are important because these names keep coming up again and again in future bomb attacks. The Riaz and Iqbal Bhatkal, and these were again parts of individuals who were part of Simi, and they were key masterminds in this attack. What we also need to know is that Simi has been at it. I mean, Simi is an organization that was founded in the 1970s, and actually their founder
in 1977. In fact, their founder is now a professor
in Chicago,
in Illinois, at one of Western Illinois University. What an irony, right?
What an irony! And things we don't look into when they begin and at their nascent phase. So in 1999. The flag should have been raised about Simi, and they should have been banned at that point of time because one of their leaders, Sheikh Yassin, actually Simi invited Sheikh Yassin, one of the key Hamas leaders, and Pakistan's Jamaat-e-Islami chief, Qazi Hussain Ahmad. Again, you have to remember the names Jamaat-e-Islami because we as a Hindu Pact have been talking about Jamaat-e-Islami quite a bit, and because they are an organization that have tentacles all around the world, including in America. And we have to counter them all the time. So Palestinian Hamas leaders Sheikh Yassin and Jamaat-e-Islami leader Qazi Hussain Ahmad attended a Simi conference in 1999. And they delivered speeches over the phone, of course. They are terrorists, so they won't be able to come to India per se, but you never know in those days. So they had people in their organization, Simi, who would openly raise slogans in support of Osama bin Laden, in support of later on in 2001 the Taliban destroying the Bamiyan Buddhas. Simi workers went on a campaign in which their slogan was Islam ka Ghazi Butt Shikan Mera Sher Osama bin Laden. That was their talking point in 2001. And this is happening in the context of September 11. You have to understand that. So at that time, Osama bin Laden was the jihad king of the world, as Islamists saw it. They had a lot of people who were even involved in promoting the September 11 attacks and giving out messages around the world. And this is the part that America needs to understand, that these people are sitting in America today. These people who were promoting Simi in those days. 8 members of Simi in May 2001, this is just before September 11, were involved in an attack on RSS headquarters in Nagpur. The attack failed, and there was direct involvement of Hizbul Mujahideen from Kashmir as well. So Hizbul Mujahideen, a Pakistani militant terrorist organization, designated as terrorist organization by the United States later on, direct armed wing of Jamaat-e-Islami, Pakistan, whose leaders' recordings are being played in SIMI meetings. 8 of SIMI members targeted RSS headquarters in Nagpur. And this continues throughout the early 2000s. And at that point of time in 2001, they said to have had 25,000 followers in India. And throughout the September 11th attack period and after that, Osama bin Laden continues to be the main hero character in SIMI. And the reason I mention Osama bin Laden as a hero character in SIMI is that today, you will see later on in our presentation, it's ISIS that SIMI's later versions are eulogizing, are looking up to. So,
Yeah, I mean,
many.
this never really went away, because there is, if you look at it from the Indian perspective, there is a continuum. When Osama bin Laden faded away, there was an emergence of Islamic State in Syria,
Mhm.
and if you look at the people who are recruited from India, most of them are coming from a substantial number of them came from Kerala, and these are the people who in past had very close ties with Simi, and Simi now takes a rebirth as
As PFI. As
PFI.
Yeah.
So
So that's
please
what I want to
continue.
say, that as Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda goes down in the geopolitics of jihadism and Islamic terrorism, so Simi and Al Qaeda are parallel to each other. Their fates go down, and the fates of ISIS and PFI come up. So these are analogous, groups that it's the same people, but slowly transforming themselves into a different role. And this is important because many experts around the world will delve into the details of, there is friction between ISIS and Al Qaeda, and there are ideological differences between them, and they will skin the hair and split hairs and discuss all this, all the takrir that happens within these Islamic groups, and how they argue with each other on small little Quranic issues. But at the back of it all, behind the scenes, when it comes to a shared enemy, when it comes to Hindus, when it comes to Jews, who they consider as enemies, they will be united, and they actually transform themselves logistically into one another whenever needed.
And
And
there's
that is
ample
something,
evidence of that. And there's
and
ample
that
evidence in India
there
of
is
that.
ample evidence of that. So SIMI, analogous to PFI, becomes PFI. Al
So what
Qaeda
is
doesn't
PFI? You
become
have to spell it
ISIS,
out,
but
Utsoda. You have
uh,
to spell it out to people who are watching for the first time. What is PFI?
it's Popular Front of India. Very very secular and non-religious sounding name, and almost a grassroots activist organization in name, but it is actually the latest version of Students Islamic Movement from India. So that's SIMI. That was the previous version of
And
PFI.
so that
And they
last
have
week
a
there was a
student
news
wing called,
item.
huh?
There was a news item last week that actually says that the people who are perpetrating terrorism in Kashmir have been asked by their masters in Pakistan, the ISI and others, to actually adopt these kinds of communist, progressive sounding names. So you may see more organizations like PFI coming up in India.
In
So
fact,
who are
there is one in Kashmir, and this tells you, the Award Wapsi gang in India and the leftists continue to call Prime Minister Modi and anybody who identifies as a Hindu as fascists. So these jihadists take a lesson from them. So in Kashmir, they have come up with this organization, which is actually Lashkar-e-Toiba, but with a new name. It's called Anti-Fascist Front. So now they almost take up these progressive socialist names. Actually, they are jihadists, but Lashkar-e-Taiba in Kashmir is now becoming anti-fascist front, because you can see on social media all these woke leftists are out there calling anybody they disagree with as fascists. So
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 now,
that's the
can I take
transformation.
a second, because I want to share something about the Popular Front of India that people who are watching the show right now may find interesting. So this is straight from Wikipedia. Okay, this is a page on Popular Front of India from Wikipedia, and you can see the facts cannot be denied. So obviously people will say, oh, everything on Wikipedia is not true or whatever. Some of them are facts, right? So they cannot be denied. In 2003, uh, accused of murdering 8 Hindus in Marat Beach in Kerala. Uh, here is the what Utsoda was talking about, which is the connection to the Simi. Here is the kidnap and murder of boys for ransom. Okay, in Karnataka. Here is the murder of CPIM, and RSS workers in 2012 and 2014. A murder of ABUP activist N. Sachin Gopal and Vishal in 2012 in the Kannur district. Campaign against the people of Northeast in 2012 after after some riots in Assam. Attack on TJ Joseph in Kerala in 2011. Shimoga violence. These are in Karnataka. And funding of anti-CAA protest. They were the ones
Ajay
behind
bhai,
the CAA.
let me. This is not just Wikipedia that you should refer. There is a
Right.
important. The Kerala High Court, okay,
Yeah.
Kerala government, which is not a BJP government, it's a leftist government. The Kerala government gave evidence to the Kerala High Court. So this is no Hindutva in play here. It's
Yeah.
all
This is the CPM government,
Christian
right?
as well as anti-Hindutva government of leftists and Congress party. The
Yep.
Kerala High Court in 2012 gave a judgment that PFI is SIMI in another form. This I'm quoting them, the Kerala High Court's statement, and they describe it as nothing but a resurrection of the banned outfit Students Islamic Movement for India in another form. And this statement came after the evidence that was provided to the High Court in Kerala by the government of Kerala, absolutely non-BJP, non-Hindutva, in fact, anti-Hindu Hindu government in Kerala in 2012.
Yep.
So you don't. If there is anybody disputing us, especially those who think they cannot trust us because we are not them, just because who we are, then they should go and look into these details.
And look, so that they, I mean, we talked so much in about the anti-CAA protests that were happening all over India. CAA being, for people who are just tuning in, who are not familiar with India, is the Constitution Amendment Act in India, which gave preferential treatment to
It's
people
not.
who are fleeing.
Ajay, it's Citizen Amendment Act.
Citizenship Amendment, sorry.
Yeah.
People who are fleeing persecution where Hindus are minority. And there were protests against granting prioritized, status, citizenship status, immigration status to people who are fleeing persecution. And who is funding this? The same PFI, as per the Law Minister of India. And this is not it. This group is also involved in forced conversion. And this group is actively, as Utsoda said earlier, actively recruiting and sending people to fight a war on behalf of ISIS in foreign lands, and and at the same time gaining experience in fighting a religious war. So why are we talking about PFI and their campus wing, which is the CFI? What is CFI?
So CFI is the Campus Front of India. The PFI themselves admit that it's CFI is their student wing, and they are now quite popular in different parts of India, especially in southern parts of India, amongst the Muslims. And the key part, the reason we are discussing PFI and CFI here is that you must have seen in media, and as well as yesterday there was protest in front of the Indian consulate. All these motley groups of progressives, wokes, and Muslims, of course, are running this campaign for for hijab, and it's quasi pro hijab campaign, because most of the people who in India are running the campaign are actually promoting a burqa, which is complete covering their face, but they're calling it hijab because that's cool in the West, and Westerners probably support that and understand that word. So this very dangerous effort to subvert uh, you know dress code in schools, and secular setup of the school system in the southern part of India, uh, it's slowly going to spread in other parts of the country as well, is led by individuals who are from Campus Front of India, which by admission of PFI is their student wing. And it's been in the news quite a bit. And there are Hindus out there who are so misinformed and some of them are actually not misinformed, they're just plain Hindu haters themselves, that are actually supporting this without realizing that they are essentially supporting an organization like PFI, which today has direct links with ISIS and sends recruits to ISIS, some of whom commit terror attacks in other parts of the world, and in the past was directly connected to Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda, as we have shown. So this is something that we need to share with the larger community in India and in America, especially in America, because these organizations that are coming out in support of PFI and CME uh, actually are spreading misinformation and making them, and some of these are Hindus. So it is important that we educate our temples, our institutions, to show that don't fall for these kinds of propaganda and misinformation. No, it is not only dangerous because it is untrue and it is actually bad for Hindus, you are essentially supporting a terror group. But many of these temples, actually, if they end up supporting this hijab thing, might end up supporting Simi and a front for ISIS, which they don't
Uchada,
want.
let me backtrack. You went way too fast. So let me backtrack because a lot of people. So we have to first introduce the topic of what is the hijab rose. So a lot of people are, for example, listening in for the first time and they may not know what they're talking about, right? So Uchada, let's start from the beginning. So I want to. So the reason we are talking about today, we are talking about 2008 bomb blast in Karnataka, and also we are talking about the hijab issue in India, is because we what Utsada and is demonstrated, and what we are talking about today is that there are links to these organizations like Simi, who are behind the 2008 bomb blast, the Indian Mujahideen being the violent form or violent front created by a student Islamic movement in India. This group has now been directly in uh, convicted and banned in India for several terrorist activities. This is the group, when it was banned, gave rise to Popular Front of India. The Popular Front of India, the successor to Simi, is now behind a lot of anti-India, anti-Hindu incidents of terrorism, conversion, and funding of India hate in India and around India. Now, this is the front. Now, what happened a couple of weeks ago, Soda, was instigated by the student wing of PFI, the Popular Front of India, the Campus Front of India, instigated a few students at a government run school in Karnataka and asked the girls who were Muslims to start wearing, instead of the school dress. In India, it's very common because of this economic disparities, social disparities, and other things, to have school dresses. Now, so these girls were instigated to not wear the school dress, but or over the school dress, to put on their hijab and go to the school wearing the hijab. And there were a lot of protests, and people protested. People, objection to it turned into a nationwide protest, all instigated by CFI, all instigated by in turn PFI, and these are the same group who have perfected a play group in terms of their work on anti-CAA movement. So you can see the direct connection here. Although, Utsada, I want to start by asking you a more difficult question. I will give you my opinion. I'll seek yours. I think personally that if people want to wear hijab, let them wear it. I don't see, if people want to express their radicalism, let them express it. I'll tell you why I say this, Utsada. The cry for reform will emerge out of the Muslim community itself. This we have seen. This we have seen in the Shah Bano case in last century, where the Supreme Court of India ruled that triple talaq, that means saying talaq three times and divorcing a woman and not giving her the alimony, putting her out on the street, was not legal, right? And that resulted in a constitutional amendment that Rajiv Gandhi engineered, and it allowed the it allowed the Muslim community, which is governed by the civil code, the Muslim civil code in India, to come up with its own rules uh, to allow, allow triple talaq, saying talaq three times by a man. Woman cannot do it by a man, and putting a woman out on the street without any alimony, without any home to go to, many times with her children. And this alienated the Muslim women from the what they would call ulema, or the leader at the Muslim society in general, and the leaders in specifically, especially the leaders of the religious schools of thoughts in India. And they are today, a vast majority of them are now, it has been proved many in many elections and other places, that they are now the reason the Muslim groups are not voting as a single block is because many of the women, when they go into the voting booth, are not voting for this retrogressive Muslim men. So I think that, you know if people want to wear hijab to school, let them wear it. I think this is more detrimental to Muslim community in general, if they were to impose hijab on Muslim women. I don't think that Hindus should be, or Indians overall, or Christians, or Hindus, or Sikhs, or India, or Jains, or Buddhists in India should say, don't wear hijab to school. You can look at Iran today. People have endured jail terms. People have been beaten up, all because these women just take their nakab or hijab off, actually hijab off, just to take a selfie, and they have been beaten up and jailed. So this is the environment. Your thoughts, Utsoda?
I want to be a little more nuanced, but in terms of the larger idea, I do agree that uh, this radicalization, this is a process of radicalization, promotion of hijab. So from that aspect, we have to be a little concerned, because even Muslim countries that had moved away from the core fundamentals of Islam early on in the 60s and the 70s. I mean, you should listen to speeches by Egyptian leader Nasser, and before that, uh, and after that Sadat. They never believed that Egypt would one day become a country where women will wear hijab and burqa. They just couldn't believe in the 60s and 70s. You go back to Afghanistan, you go back to many countries in the world, including Syria. The movement to promote hijab coincides with efforts to radicalize the society, which also coincides with increase in violence and increase in certain countries where there is a lot of diversity, creating a civil war situation. In India's case, it will lead to all three of these things. So even though as an idea, I agree with you, Ajay Bhai, that it is their own doing, and they will be the ones who will suffer the most. But in a country like India, where there is a significant Muslim population and majority non-Muslim population, this movement coincides, if you study other parts of the world like Egypt and Syria and Tunisia and all these countries, as I said, will coincide with radicalization, will coincide with increased conflict, and will coincide with more death and destruction. In some parts of India, also a civil war scenario. So that is important for us to understand, because we will be affected by it as Hindu community. That is important for us. So I do understand your point in terms of comparing it to Iran, and I agree with you at that level, that it is their loss, it is their backwardness, it is their and I believe the part that is really funny here is that there is a big chunk of Western feminists who support this. People who call themselves feminists in the West, who support this. The people who will be suffering the biggest loss in their movement, in the promotion of their ideas, will be those Western feminists. So since 1970s and 80s, when they have been taking off their clothes and asking for freedom, and moving forward for 40 years to achieve some of those freedoms, they will be set back 100 years if they promote this movement. But they are some of these leaders and some of these feminists are so convoluted in their ideological mix up that they have ended up in, that they will essentially be pushing back their own movement of feminism back 100 years, which I think in the West a lot of conservatives will enjoy. But for us as Hindus, I believe we have to be careful and nuanced, because it will lead to violence that will affect us.
Yeah, it's interesting that people who are big in fashion industry are coming up, are coming in favor eh, uh, of hijab, while in their own personal life they're as far away from it as possible.
So they have no skin in the
A
game,
very
Ajay.
famous model from from US, Bella
Bella Hadid.
Hadid,
Yeah,
actually
but
came up.
Bella Hadid is a Muslim. Number one,
Yes,
she's a Muslim, and number two, she see, this is the point that I'm trying to make here. They have no skin in the game. Bella
exactly.
Hadid makes millions of dollars, hangs out in a bikini 70% of her time, and wants to call herself a Muslim because that gives her a separate identity, that gives her promotion and jobs. Every big fashion house wants to show that there is a Muslim in their payrolls who is beautiful, and she's an accomplished model in her own right. Uh, so she plays the identity politics that is so common and mainstream in the United States now. Everybody is playing it to the detriment of the future of this country. But and what she's doing here is that she has no skin in the game. She will never be in a burqa or a
This
hijab.
is
She
exploiting.
will
This
never
is
visit.
yeah.
She will never visit Afghanistan or Iran or any of these places where she will condemn these women to a life of servitude and backwardness.
But
But let's make some statements, because I
yeah,
might get
yeah,
a
yeah.
big
I
check.
mean, I think I mean, this is look. I mean, what she is doing is exploiting, exploiting an issue for her personal financial
So
gains.
what she's doing is exploiting two things: exploiting identity politics in America, and exploiting the powerlessness of the women who are actually forced to wear the hijab and the burqa.
But look,
She's doing two things.
as I said, I think that Hindus in India would be better off letting this just play out. I think they will see the you know the effect of letting it play out without interference in 30 years. I don't think this will lead to more radicalization. I think it's quite the opposite. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see, because this is now in the courts, and and we'll see how it plays out.
No, that's the part, Ajay bhai. The last part, I disagree with you. I think my understanding of studying these movements in many countries, as I said, will lead to radicalization. Now, how we deal with it is important, because countries like Bosnia Herzegovina, which were intentionally radicalized for geopolitical reasons in the early 90s, they are realizing that radicalization is going to impact is so bad now that they are banning the hijab. So in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they are beginning to ban the hijab in public places. But in the 90s, for geopolitical reasons, many Western powers let radicalization enter that country because they wanted to use them against Russians or Eastern European
Yeah, yeah.
powers, former Warsaw
But
Pact
look,
powers.
Turkey, Egypt, I mean, these are all Islamic countries that don't allow the Afghanistan type, burqas. So, it is not just, Chechnya and Bosnia Herzegovina and places like that. So, it is, I think, and I was listening to an interview by Muhammad Arif Khan, a Muslim who is also governor of Kerala, and he gives a very, detailed, uh, religious explanation. But I don't think we should go into it. I think we are what we our goal here is to what we started with, which is who is promoting this narrative. So so the reason I brought this all up, so that is, look
Who
at
is
the
running this
narrative.
narrative, Ajay bhai? Who is not promoting your
Yeah,
Communist
yeah.
Party of India and
Who is forcing this
Wokes,
narrative?
and Wokes in
Who is forcing
Berkeley.
this narrative?
Yeah,
So
Berkeley, the Wokes are promoting this narrative. It's not
yeah,
the promotion part that is important.
it's the
Who is
force.
running this
Who is
narrative?
running the narrative? Look,
And
I
that
mean,
is CME and PFI.
Exactly. So what we want to say here, what we want to make a point is, it's not about the the girls in Karnataka in school wearing hijab or not hijab. That is not the point here. The point is, there is a bigger picture here, and the bigger picture is, there are groups involved here that trace back their history to the groups that have promoted terrorism in India. These are the groups that have provided fighters to ISIS and its Islamic State. And that is what we want to be cognizant of. it's not a question of someone wearing burqa, hijab, niqab, all of that. It is, what is the bigger picture? Why is it being done now, and why is this being done, in India? So that is really the case. And so that you put out an awesome graphic, and I'm going to put this up on the screen now, and maybe you can kind of walk us through that, and tell us what this graphic is all about. So let me put this up here and walk us through it. So that you're on mute again.
Thank you, Ajay bhai. So,
Yeah.
I, I have to give all the credit to our in-house
To
graphics expert,
Vannaji,
Vandana
absolutely.
Sharma. Yes, and Vandana ji
We
has
cannot
done.
thank Vannaji enough for all the awesome artwork that she does. She's so talented and gifted. So thank you, Vannaji. I don't know if you're still on, but yeah, thank you, Vannaji. Go ahead.
Yeah, very amazingly well done work. There was too much information I unloaded on her, too many, too many screenshots of too many things, but she still managed to put it together. Please go to our Twitter account, Hindu Pact, @Hindu Pact. We have it on our Twitter account. Please share it. If you know temples, if you know Hindu organizations that are having second thoughts on this, and they feel somehow that they need to support this agenda, show them who are the people who are running this agenda. There will be political leaders who will be coming out in support or against, depending on what their vote bank is in India. There will be agenda drivers in America, media organizations in America like New York Times and Washington Post, who are going to spin this in different ways, and that is fine. They all have something to benefit from it, but do not lose focus from the fact that it is ISIS connected groups now and former Al Qaeda connected groups like PFI and CFI, which are actually running this movement. So please be careful. Share it with any temple you know who is even having thoughts about promoting this, or signing up to any campaign that is promoting this. So this movement of promoting hijab, even though in most places in India they are actually promoting burqa, calling it hijab, uh, is led by MS Sajid, Rauf Sharif, and Ataullah Punjalakatte. They are three leaders of PFI. They have been directly communicating with four girls named Alia, Muskan, two of them named Alia, and Almas. These are the four girls. As you can see, until November, all of these four girls never wore a hijab. They would be they in their Instagram and their TikTok videos, they were wearing normal, average teenage girls clothes, and there is evidence all over the place to prove that. Their school events, they were not wearing any hijab or any burqa until November 2021. Then starts their messaging, and these messaging are coming to them from Mr. MS Sajid, Rauf Sharif, and Ataullah Punjalakatte. They are directly working with them. They are using WhatsApp groups to communicate with them, and we are showing evidence of that. They are putting those also on Twitter, so that's how you can see that they are not even hiding what they are doing. So from November 1, they start this series of campaigns. Babri Masjid victims of injustice, students not safe in Karnataka, Azan ek behtareen awaz, it's Urdu for saying Azan, which is the call to prayer, public call to prayer for Muslims, is an amazing thing. Rauf in jail. So all these things, they are, suddenly they start promoting it. And you see that in all over the media, they are being picked up, and promoted further. Then actually you see that PFI comes out openly supporting this, and then CFI, which is the student wing of PFI, starts putting in flags and volunteers in these rallies that are happening in support of these hijab slash burqa protests. Then we started looking into what the connection is. And so in this infographics, we show the headline you can see the headline next to the involved Islamic groups. Under the involved Islamic groups, PFI is simi is in another form, Kerala government tells High Court. That's the High Court judgment, High Court statement I was referring to in 2012, where the government of Kerala, a leftist anti-Hindu government, tells the High Court of Kerala that PFI is actually simi. Then we show some of the connections between PFI, CFI with Islamic State with latest headlines. So in the past 4 years, whether they are terrorist attacks in Sri Lanka where more than 100 people were killed in a church bombing, whether they are suicide bombing in Afghanistan on behalf of ISIS, Islamic State Khorasan, which is the Khorasan or Central Asia branch of Islamic State or ISIS, the person who committed that jihad attack, suicide bombing, was an Indian member of PFI, as well as uh, you know ISIS recruitment. 6 of them from Kerala. In fact, in the last 8 years, the largest number of recruitment to ISIS from India has happened from the state of Kerala and from PFI. Almost all of them connected to PFI. So this is the level of connection that this student protest has to ideological groups like ISIS. And if we are not able to show this and highlight this in the public sphere, then we would have failed as a community. And it is our responsibility to educate the quote unquote left or liberal, whoever they want to at least share this information with them. If they still want to go ahead and support in a group that wants to support, that works with ISIS, fine, it's their choice. So but at least present this information out there. That's why we made this infographics. That's why it's important for you all who are watching us and listening to us to share this with your friends who may have other political and ideological disagreements with you.
Absolutely. So that thank you for amazing work on this. Thank you, Vadnaji, for putting together a fantastic graphic. We cannot thank you enough for all the work that you do, and your talents that you put to use. I mean, thank you very much. So that with that, we have concluded this topic. So let's move on to some of our regularly scheduled segments. The first one being the Hindu phobe or Hindu hater of the week. Utsada, I'm bringing Hindu hater of the week up first because it is directly related to the infographic that we put out, right? And so, tell us about the Hindu phobe of the week and why you have picked this as Hindu phobe of the week.
Well, Ajay bhai, as you can see, those of us who are watching the screen can see that right after we tweeted yesterday our infographics on this connection between PFI, CFI, ISIS, and the hijab slash burqa protests, we started getting threats. Within an hour of us posting it on social media, we received from a Twitter account named @LTham. It sounds like an Arabic word. I don't know what it means. And it was in Arabic. So the entire, but thanks to modern technology that immediately tweet is translated into English. So we received a threat saying that we advise you Hindus to look at the African Christians and think twice before you target Muslims. The world is in motion, war is a debate, and the days are times. So I believe it's a quote from the Hadiths. It's very poetic. So the hate is there, but it's very poetically presented. I don't know. Somebody can help us who is watching this can help to figure out if this is from one of the Hadiths. Uh, then they again tweeted, God's curse be upon the evil scholars who forced you, O Hindus, O Magians, Jews, Crusaders, and Buddha, against the people of Sunnah and the community. So this almost sounds very Quranic. I'm not that informed, or I don't have the time to go and research it right away, but it sounds very, is yeah. If somebody can find a
I
Hadith,
mean, regardless, right? I mean, regardless of where it came from,
yeah,
it is definitely written as a threat, and
as a threat, it is a threat
basically
to
they're
us.
saying that, hey,
And
back off.
yeah, they go on to say the scum of the torrent will take light years to realize. So they're calling us the scum of the torrent, us Hindus, because we have God's curse upon the evil scholars that we are. uh, the scum of the torrent will take light years to realize that they are just sheep. Okay, we are just sheep. God suffices us, and he's the best agent. I don't know whose agent God is, but this one certainly looks like an ISI agent. But we'll work with that. And luckily, we complained to Twitter about this. We informed them, and I think Twitter blocked this account or suspended. I don't know. We
At
don't
least they
see
did
here.
this.
Huh? Okay. All right, Ajay bhai.
So, that's all I can say, right? Or would you like to say something else?
No. I don't. I know. I thought that was God screaming after hearing this message from.
After, yeah, if you put out tweets like this, so that this is what you get.
Well, well, all we did was tweet the infographics, which is, you know, thanks to Vandana ji, she has correlated every evidence in public sphere, open source information that is available, media reports, to substantiate the connection we are establishing in our accusation here. And it is sad that they have the audacity on social media to threaten us, but that is the nature of the world and we live in. And that is why, Ajay, it's important, to oppose the Senate Islamophobia bill, because they will get away with this. If the Senate Islamophobia bill passes, this is what they will get away with. So
Absolutely. Eh,
that's important for us.
So that from a sad news of the day to some good news of the, so let me bring up good news of the week, and here is some music to go with it. Hey, so that, remember the CAA we were talking about, the Citizenship Amendment Act, and this is the one which gives prioritized immigration to people who are persecuted in the countries surrounding India. When the Taliban took over Afghanistan uh, last year, a lot of all the Hindus, pretty much everyone who was Hindus, Sikhs, who were not Muslims, excuse me, had to flee Afghanistan, and they landed in India. There were very nice visuals of them landing in India with their families, distraught, but at least they have a home to go to, which has always been there for them, and that is India. And thanks to the CAA, they have an easier path to citizenship. And now they were thanking the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi, for CAA, and they were saying that, hey, can you make it even more easier by having one window clearance, which in Indian terms, which means that you don't have to run from one department to another, but you can just walk into one office and all your processes, immigration processes, are taken care of. This is absolutely a good news, a fantastic news, that India was able to provide a respite to all the people who are fleeing Afghanistan to avoid persecution over there. Not only India, but so that you know that there have been ample demands that America should also grant prioritized immigration to these people, a few hundred of them who have no place to go. They have lived there in Afghanistan. They had lived for thousands of years, generations, and now they had to give up everything that they had and leave. So there are, thank God that there are a few democracies that are willing to take them. But this is really important because this shows the power of CAA, and it also shows how the anti-CAA movement uh, was not just uh, not just plain wrong, but it was also a morally bankrupt uh, movement. It was meant to stop these people from getting out of the country where they were getting massacred, as essentially, for in last few years, or had a chance to get killed. And this morally bankrupt anti-CAA movement, promoted by the likes of PFI, was trying to stop them from coming to India. So that I'm so happy that these people were able to get out of Afghanistan.
Thank you, Ajay bhai, and this is thank you for the good news. And this is why it is important to stand out there, educate, share information, share truth. We live in a world today where it's not just a battle of soldiers, it's not just a war of guns and bullets, but it's a war of ideas. It's a battle of ideas, and disinformation is a tool of warfare that has been used against us very, very aggressively over the past 7 8 years. We have to come out and share the truth. and that eventually will prevail.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks, Utsada. And finally, finally, Utsada, I need a drink here, but finally, we come to our very last segment of the show, and that is the Hindu Seva or Charity Act of the Week. And Utsada, we have been doing this for past few weeks. We'll do it one more time this week, and that is nominate Hindu Pact for the Seva Charity Act of the Week. As you know, let's hear from first start with the music, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Hindu Pact.
मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं मनसा सततं स्मरणीयं वचसा सततं वदनीयं लोकहितं.
And Utsada, once again, the Seva Charity Act of the Week for this week is Hindu Pact. And the reason, Utsada, I keep putting Hindu Pact is because, as you know, we did not have a fundraising gala late last year. We do two in a year. Last year we had only one. We are putting out a lot of research. We have student interns. We have people who are on our staff, and we need your help in whatever way you can help us. We need your help to uh, carry out the work of Hindu advocacy. This last week was amazing for Hindu Pact. A lot of the news cycles in India and in America were driven by the press releases that we put out, and talking about the swastika, and the misuse of swastika by the Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau. It was driven by the hypocrisy of Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau in terms of how he had made exactly opposite statements in US and in Canada, when there was a truckers protest and the farmer protest in India. There were entire TV shows that were nothing but reading of our press releases or discussion of on our press release. So if please help us continue this really really important work and donate. Go to hindupact.org, click on donate button on the right hand side, on the top right hand side, and whatever donation you can make, even if it's $1, $2, $5 or more, we would be glad to have your contribution. Utsada, with that, final words from you before we close out the show today.
We thank everybody for joining and listening to us. Hope we could share some information that was valuable and that you can share with other people. Let us know if you have any other thoughts. Write to us, go to our Twitter account, share our content, join us on Facebook and Twitter, and see you all next week.
And yeah,
yeah,
the infographic that Utsoda put out is also available on hindupact.org/infographics. We have close to 25 infographics. Please, feel free to download them, share with other people. We have a lot of videos. We have a lot of other things over there. And please feel free to share all the material that we have on our website. And support us. I mean, not just we talked about financial support, but that's not the only way to support us. We of course appreciate financial support, but you can also support us by forwarding our material to your friends and family. You can support us by just talking about the Hindu issues with your community and your friends. So we appreciate all the support in every form that you can give us, and we look forward to seeing you again. Right, Utsada? Every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern. We come live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and we talk about contemporary American Hindu issues or issues that impact American Hindus in one way or the other. And sometimes we talk about the global issues. But before I go, I want to say that this week, Decibels is back, and they have amazing piece of new music that they have created just for Hindu Lounge, this episode of Hindu Lounge. So as we close out the show, please stay tuned for 2 minutes and listen to this amazing piece of music that Decibel has created just for this episode of Hindu Lounge. Thank you, Decibel. And once again, this is with Utsav Chakrabarti, who is the executive director of Hindu Pact. I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, or WHPA, and convener of Hindu Pact. And we come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And on to Decibel. So here is the music created for just this show of Hindu Lounge.